Beerus is one of the few recurring characters introduced in Dragon Ball Super. Marking himself as the first antagonist of the sequel series, his place is rather special within the franchise, as, not since Master Roshi has a final antagonist of an arc become a mentor to our protagonists. Something that I think is important to consider is the place he holds within the narrative as a whole. Why does Beerus exist? If you ask me, when looking at his spot within the narrative, I believe the answer to that is quite simple. Beerus is a ceiling that must be surpassed, another character for Goku and Vegeta to become stronger than. In fact, I would go as far to argue that one of the few through lines within the DBS narrative is the journey Goku takes to beat Beerus. This video is going to go over the history of Beerus' power and explain how him as a goalpost has changed throughout Super's run. This phenomenon is something that I shall dub the ever-changing ceiling, since, as we'll get into, this change has occurred a couple of times throughout the series. We're going to dissect both the anime and the manga of Super, as well as the Broly movie. After that, I'll explain why I find this changing of power to be incredibly problematic for both Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball as a whole. Before getting into the official canon of DBS, we have to start with the Battle of Gods movie. This is because it's the first display of Beerus' power, with him saying that he had to use 70% of his power against God Goku. This is sort of backed by an interview with Toriyama where he said that if Beerus' strength is a 10, God Goku would be right at 6. Incidentally, I guess Whis would be a 15. Converted to multipliers, this would mean that God Goku in Battle of Gods is 60% of Beerus' full power, and Whis would be only 50% stronger than Beerus. This has become known as the God Scale. Diving into the anime, I want to cover the portrayals of Beerus here, as I find that, when examining it, it's clear that there's a consistent narrative of Beerus' power being pushed here. Within Battle of Gods, we see that the initial God Scale and the claim about him being at 70% get retconned in this fight with God Goku. Now, to be fully transparent, I'm pretty okay with this. In the same interview in which he gives the God Scale, he says that he had no plans to continue Dragon Ball Super, so it makes sense that he made such a claim without thinking about the rest of Super. Other than that, there's nothing too notable about the ways Beerus is depicted that's separate from the movies being both Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. Moving to the Universe 6 arc, when Goku uses the Blue Kaioken, he mentions that he planned to use this form/technique if he were to ever fight Beerus again. What follows is a brief interaction where Beerus is shocked by this, and Whis comments on the concern in his voice. Beerus then writes us off as if he was just worried about Goku losing to Hit. The Goku Black arc doesn't offer much in terms of this discussion from the anime. The only thing that I think may be worth mentioning is the fact that Beerus underestimates the extent of his powers, saying that he thought killing Zamasu in the present should kill him in the future. But we know he's wrong. Other than that, this is the first time we see him use the Hakai, but there's not much mention about it from other characters in regards to the extent of Beerus' power. And now, we're at the Tournament of Power. Here is where I think there's a lot to say about Beerus. To sort of go in order, let's start with Super's most infamous power scaling quote. The fact that Jiren is immortal that a god of destruction cannot defeat. Now, this quote here has a couple of potential meanings. It could mean that Jiren is stronger than a singular god of destruction. It could mean that Jiren is stronger than all of the God of Destructions, or it could mean that Jiren is stronger than a specific God of Destruction. I find that this statement best makes sense when looking at the latter two interpretations, meaning that we get rid of the fact that Jiren is stronger than one God of Destruction. This is because within the dub of Dragon Ball Super, Whis specifically states that Jiren is stronger than his destroyer, being Belmod. This is also backed up by the fact that when Whis repeats the fact that Jiren is above a destroyer, it shows Belmod during, the Universe 7 Genki Dama. Now, the stance that Jiren beats all destroyers is never necessarily contradicted. This is because when Whis first mentions the quote, he jokes that Belmod is stronger than Beerus because he lost to him in an arm wrestling match. Beerus here isn't really joking, and you could say that his reaction indicates that there is some merit to Whis saying this. Now, the reason why the first stance isn't really valid is because of the next moment worth mentioning. That being the total of 3 characters that tank the God of Destruction power. We see Golden Frieza and Base Goku tank the power of Sidra's destruction. And we see that Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta and Frieza tank Toppo's Hakais. The reason why I believe this means we can't say Jiren is stronger than a singular God of Destruction is because if that were true, the impact of the quote gets greatly diminished upon realizing that 3 characters are also stronger than the power of a singular destroyer. 2 of those characters in particular were stronger than a destroyer before the tournament even started. The last thing to mention about the Tournament of Power is the climax of the arc, that being Goku utilizing completed Ultra Instinct. Upon doing this, all the gods of destruction stand out of respect, and Beerus mentions how Goku is an incredible guy. Now, although Beerus isn't literally looking at the camera and saying, hey, Goku is stronger than me now, I think it's abundantly clear that throughout the DBS anime, Goku starts off weaker than Beerus and his journey comes to a climax when Beerus recognizes and respects his power. With Goku taking the energy of destruction before this moment and beating the mortal who may be stronger than a god who's stronger than Beerus, I think it's clear that at this moment within the anime, Ultra Instinct Goku is stronger than Beerus. While you might say that Goku is still weaker than Beerus because it's never explicitly stated that he is stronger, I would offer the fact that if Goku isn't as strong as Beerus yet, why would Beerus stand out of respect for him? If there's a big gap between the two of them, then why would this moment hold any significance? Why would all of the God of Destructions respect his power and status if he's still weaker than the God of Destructions? I find that this moment here is kind of sullied and makes no sense under the context that Goku is still weaker than the Destroyers. Moving on to Broly, we know that Goku says Broly might be stronger than Beerus. This would put Broly in the same realm of power as Jiren and Ultra Instinct Goku. This would also make sense if you believe that Jiren is comparable to Beerus, as with each threat growing with each past arc, Broly being placed in this tier starts to make a lot more sense. We'll also be mentioning this when delving into the manga. So, when we look at all this together, we have God Goku is weaker than Beerus. Beerus is worried about Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku. Jiren is stronger than his destroyer, who might be stronger than Beerus, and then Beerus stands out of respect for Goku's martial accomplishments, and finally, Goku says Broly might be stronger than Beerus. I find that this progression clearly shows that Beerus was sort of a goalpost for Goku to reach within Dragon Ball Super, and by the end he might have, or at the very least, is comparable to Beerus at this point. This indicates a consistent plot thread throughout the entirety of the anime of Dragon Ball Super, something that's even acknowledged within Dragon Ball Super Broly. But still, people like to think that Beerus negs Goku at the end of the Tournament of Power, as well as all of these characters. Why is that? The manga. Before we get into this, I do want to come out and transparently state that yes, I do think the Super anime is almost blatantly saying that the upper tier of characters within the show, being like Jiren, Goku, Broly, Gogeta, are stronger than Beerus. While people for the longest time, even still today, deny this without the manga's influence, I do believe that the manga's inconsistent portrayals of the character do not help squash belief in this fallacy. Now, the manga takes this consistent plotline from the anime and just messes it up. Similar to the anime, let's go through his relevant portrayals throughout the arcs. To quickly go over some minor differences, there seems to be no change from Battle of Gods and Resurrection F from the anime, obviously because Resurrection F isn't in the manga. Meaning that Beerus here is obviously way stronger than God Goku, Blue Goku, and Vegeta, and Golden Frieza from those two films. The first notable change, though, is within the Universe 6 arc, where the Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken is nowhere to be seen. Along with this, the interaction indicating Beerus' surprise at Goku's growth is also cut from the story. This would indicate that, obviously Goku is getting stronger, he's probably not creeping up on Beerus' level. Next up, we have the Goku Black arc, where Goku and Vegeta fuse into Vegito. So, for those who don't know, the manga takes Vegito's power much higher than the anime. As compared to Vegito and Zamasu being near equals in the anime, with it even indicating that Zamasu is stronger, go watch my previous power scaling video, the manga has Vegito dominate Zamasu through and through. Now, this relates to Beerus as just before Vegito defuses, and when he does the final Kamehameha, Shin, the Supreme Kai, states that Vegito's power might already be greater than Lord Beerus's. Now, this is something that I'll tear anew in a bit, but just sort of keep it in mind for now as I find it becomes much more relevant when we're talking about the big guy, the goat, and the snack bar. Right after the Goku Black arc, we see Mastered Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta fight Beerus. This is because the Oracle Fish tells Beerus that Goku and Vegeta will one day end up being Beerus' rivals. Insulted by this, Beerus decides to challenge Vegeta to a fight. Vegeta here is significantly stronger than himself in the Universe 6 tournament, as he's gone through a bunch of training, an entire arc's worth of Zenkais, and a new form. It's clear from the Oracle Fish and Whis that Beerus isn't taking Vegeta too seriously. But if he continues to toy with Vegeta, Beerus could end up pretty mad. This ends up happening as Mastered Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta ends up clocking Beerus right in the face. Beerus then one-shots Vegeta and tells him that he's impressed with his growth. But it'll take him 1,000,000 years to reach his level of power. Now, similar to the anime, the Tournament of Power has a lot to say regarding Beerus' power. However, it's different from the anime. Not much different, but different nonetheless. Firstly is the God of Destruction exhibition match, where all 12 gods fight in a battle royale. Here, the last two standing are Beerus and Katila? I know it's like tequila, but Katila, alright. This would imply that these two are the strongest two of the 12 gods. A small detail, though, that is important is that it's clear Belmont threw the fight, as he just pretended to go down after an unspecified amount of time. This isn't to say that Belmod is as strong as these two, just that this would imply that Belmod is closer to these two than the other 9 God of Destructions. This is important because after Goku fights Toppo, Toppo states that in terms of pure strength, Jiren is stronger than Belmod. This is the manga's equivalent of the God of Destruction statement, which you could argue confirms that in the anime. The point of the statement is to say that Jiren is specifically stronger than his destroyer, Belmod. Now, during this exhibition match, Goku states that he realizes he has a long way to go, indicating that he is still far weaker than Beerus and the other God of Destructions. Finally, it becomes clear that Beerus' fight serves as some sort of foreshadowing for Goku unlocking Ultra Instinct. Once again, something I'm going to rip apart once we talk about the implications of Beerus' appearances, but I have to mention it here nonetheless. Before we leave the tournament, we have to mention that there is an equivalent moment to Beerus recognizing Goku's strength, but it's much less grandiose than it is in the anime. What's important to note is that Beerus seems frustrated that Goku was able to utilize the power of Ultra Instinct before he was. So next up is Broly, and if we were to assume that everything were the same as the movie, then Broly might be stronger than Beerus. Now, I know I made a video explaining why this might not be the case, and trust me, we'll be addressing Broly eventually. This means that the next thing we have to talk about are the 2 manga-exclusive arcs, Moro and Granola. In the Moro arc, Beerus is mostly absent besides for the end. But the end is, whack. That's because Beerus reveals that he can intervene in the conflict and will defeat Earthly Moro. This would mean that Beerus here is stronger than Moro and completed Ultra Instinct Goku and Beerus, given that Moro absorbed Beerus' power. This would also indicate that Beerus is above the pay grade of Ultra Instinct Goku from the Tournament of Power and Jiren by a wide margin. I personally believe that this would mean that he is stronger than Broly and Gogeta as well, but I know that there is an interview where Toyo said that after the Moro arc that Broly is stronger than Goku, and thus Moro during that time. The Granola arc starts off with a pretty massive bomb in regards to this topic. That's because we have a preliminary training scene with Vegeta and Beerus, where Beerus straight up tells Vegeta that he ordered the destruction of his homeworld. This enrages Vegeta and leads to Vegeta going Super Saiyan Blue Evolution against Beerus, where Beerus then just sits his ass down. Since their last fight, we know that Vegeta managed to punch Beerus in the face, but now we see that a version of Vegeta who is immensely stronger than he once was, is still no match for the Purple Cat. The other relevant fact here is that his interaction starts with Beerus stating that Ultra Instinct isn't the only technique of the gods, and that the God of Destructions have their own technique, which will be realized as Ultra Ego later in the narrative. Beerus also mocks the notion of he himself having Ultra Instinct. The Granola arc does similar shenanigans of it to Moro, making it pretty explicit that Goku, Vegeta, and Granola and Gas do in fact get walled by Beerus, since in the details of Granola's wish, Torombo specifies that he'll make Granola the strongest besides the God of Destruction. Well, he says gods, but we all know who he's talking about. Now that we're at the end of the Granola, let's do a real quick recap like we did with the anime. So we start with no indication of Goku and Vegeta catching up to Beerus, to Vegeta Blue might be stronger than Beerus, to Mastered Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta punching Beerus in the face, to Beerus trying to use Ultra Instinct and is roughly equal to Quitella, and Belmod shouldn't be too far behind them, which matters because Jiren is stronger than Belmod. And following that, Beerus is jealous that Goku achieved Ultra Instinct before him, then Broly might be stronger than Beerus if we base it off the movie, to Beerus saying that he can beat Moro, to Beerus negging Super Saiyan Blue Evolution of Vegeta, and then the Granola folks are weaker than Beerus. To end off this recap section with Superhero, I feel like Superhero doesn't bring much to the table in regards to this discussion. I think someone could maybe mention the fact that Beerus was worried about Broly, and that could mean something, but that's a pretty minute detail that seems to be up to one's interpretation a bit too much, even for me. Something else I have to mention here, now this is unscripted, this is me just kind of rambling real quick. Right now, on the time of recording, it is February 18th, and in 2 days, Dragon Ball Super Chapter 102 is coming out. Now, in this chapter, it's supposed to be Beast Gohan versus completed Ultra Instinct Goku. Now, this fight does take place on Beerus' planet, and Beerus and Whis are witnesses of this fight. So, for all I know, this video could become outdated in like 2 days, as it may seem that, well, not necessarily outdated, but it may seem that Gohan could be stronger than Beerus. Once again, we don't know for sure. The chapter's not out yet, but I thought I should clarify it nonetheless, just so I don't get flooded with comments about it, if that happens to be the case. So, what's the point in explaining all this? The purpose of looking at Beerus here is that it highlights a phenomenon that once again I'm going to call the ever-changing ceiling. By this, I mean that within Dragon Ball Super, Beerus serves a pretty concrete purpose, that being a goalpost for Goku and Vegeta to reach. The thing is, though, is that the goalpost seems to be constantly changing each time Goku or Vegeta get closer to it. By constantly changing, we need to remember that this happens twice. The first time was with the God Scale, and the second time was with the Tournament of Power. Because obviously, the story indicates that Goku and Jiren are stronger than Beerus. However, we know in Moro and Granola that the two of them were nowhere near Beerus' power. Now, I believe that this takes place more so in the manga as compared to the anime, as within the anime, once Beerus is surpassed, or at least he seems to be surpassed given his reaction to Ultra Instinct and the Jiren statement, Super just ends. But the manga has no excuse. It's clear that from seeing his reactions to Goku and Vegeta's growth, the two Saiyans are getting closer to Beerus' power by the end of the tournament. Even before then, the Oracle Fish states that Vegeta and Goku are getting closer to him, with Jiren being stronger than Belmod, and Belmod being comparable to Beerus, and Goku being stronger than Jiren. There's a lot to imply that Goku is comparable or on the level of Beerus during this time. If we take Broly at face value, then this is supported even more by the fact that Goku says Broly might be stronger than Beerus. All of this, however, gets thrown out the window in Moro and Granola, as Beerus says he can kill Moro, who stopped Master Ultra Instinct Goku, and Beerus one-shots Vegeta, who at this point is far stronger than Master Ultra Instinct Goku during the Tournament of Power. I think the simple explanation for this is that Toyotaro and Toriyama realized that Super was to keep going after the Tournament of Power, and because of that, they needed to set Beerus farther away from Goku and Vegeta, so the two of them will continue to have something to work for. And this is the ever-changing ceiling. It's a simple story retcon. If it's a retcon we must accept, and Beerus is actually this strong, then within the narrative we have to accept a few things as well. Firstly, we have to say that during his first fight with Vegeta, Beerus was using less than a fraction of a percent of his power, despite the fact that according to Whis, he should have gotten Series to prevent losing his temper. Next up, and probably most massively, is that Goku during Broly and Shin during the Goku Black Arc in regards to Beerus' power were just wrong. If Goku was right, then Broly would be stronger than Granola, Gas, True Ultra Instinct, and Ultra Ego, given that we know that these four are weaker to Beerus, going off of Torombo's statements. If Shin was right, then Blue Gogeta would be astronomically stronger than Beerus, given that we know that the two fusion multipliers are equal, meaning that if Vegito Blue in the Goku Black Arc was equal to Beerus, Gogeta should be much stronger than him like 2 years down the road. I don't know the exact time, someone can quote me on that if you want. This also means that Vegito Blue from the Goku Black Arc clears literally every non-God of Destruction or Angel character in the series. We also have to accept that Beerus is probably millions of times stronger than Belmod, Jiren, and the other God of Destructions, besides maybe Katila. This is important because we know that Belmod is much stronger than the rest of the God of Destructions, given that Beerus didn't quite knock him out. Why I think this matters will be explained shortly. But before we get into that, I must add that Beerus' power wasn't the only thing that changed retroactively. There's also the change of Beerus' interest in Ultra Instinct. By that, I'm referring to the fact that within Granola, Beerus says that Ultra Instinct doesn't suit the God of Destructions, and that it's something that only the Angels use. As I mentioned earlier, this is to foreshadow/build up Vegeta's Ultra Ego. Now, I'm sure you guys noticed when I initially pointed it out that this is in direct contradiction to what Whis and Beerus say about Ultra Instinct and the Tournament of Power, which show that Beerus was trying to master Ultra Instinct, but now he just doesn't care. These two retcons, I argue, have drastic consequences on the quality of the narrative of Dragon Ball Super as a whole. Before explaining what's wrong with all this, I do want to add once again that I really don't mind retconning the God Scale. This is because it changes virtually nothing in the grand narrative of Super. The only thing it directly changes is one of 3 of the official tellings of Battle of Gods, and a takeback by the author. Going back to the other retcon, the reason why Beerus' changing power matters so much is that it retroactively ruins the credibility of the characters making such statements, as well as the narrative, the former of which has massive implications on Dragon Ball as a whole. That is because character statements are a crucial piece of Dragon Ball power scaling. There are many examples of this throughout all 4 of the main series, with characters referencing multipliers, comparative statements, to even direct feats of power. So to have explicit examples within the narrative that arbitrarily go against this, I think is pretty damaging to the overall credibility of the story. Now, if one were to write the power scaling stuff off, then may I remind you that this also applies to what Whis implies about the lore in regards to Beerus' usage of Ultra Instinct, meaning that, unlike the Batara retcon, Super blatantly and explicitly retconned plot points within its own story. I find that a simple rebuttal to this would be that it's just a simple retcon. I mean, Super has introduced a couple of these before, so what's one more? While this is true, I do find that this one has worse implications for the narrative than others. For example, we can look at what's probably the biggest and most well-known retcon in Super, the Potara retcon. Now, here's another hot take about Vegito for the second video in a row. I don't think the Potara retcon was that bad. This is because the Potara retcon doesn't drastically change anything previously established within the story. To explain why, let's briefly go over what the retcon changes from Z. Firstly, the Potara is built up to be a permanent fusion, as said by the old Kai. This is to the surprise of Shin, who didn't know the earrings had such power. Goku and Vegeta then fuse and defuse within Buu, with Goku saying that it might be because of Buu's weird body. Moving on to Super, Goku wants to confirm this assumption and asks Gowasu if he was right, where Gowasu says that he was not. I have no problem with this because nothing from Z is directly contradicted. It's clear that Goku's statement about Buu was an assumption about forces he knew nothing about. Furthermore, it makes sense why Shin didn't know this because not only did he not even know about the Potara before Buu, but we learn that Kais won't defuse via Potara, which tracks for both him and old Kai. With the time limit established, we then learn that if the mortal Potara is powerful enough, the fusion will cease. Once again, I don't find this problematic because it now essentially has the same rules as Metamoran fusion, given that we know that its time limit also decreases if the fusion is powerful enough. Compare this to the Beerus retcon, where I've already gone over how it directly contradicts character statements about power and the narrative. To focus on the former, you could say that both Goku and Shin were wrong because they didn't know the extent of Beerus' power. The issue I take with this is that both of these characters have been exposed to Beerus' power. Not only that, but Shin and Beerus are intrinsically connected, meaning that if any characters within the series were to know Beerus' power, it should be these two, excluding angels and other higher deities. With the Ultra Instinct retcon, I think the cope is that Beerus had a change of heart and abandoned it off screen. While I think if we were to accept that, it also contradicts the fact that Beerus directly implies that Ultra Instinct and Ego are on the same level of godly power, meaning that I doubt he came up with it between the Tournament of Power and Granola. Even if you still believe that, I gotta say, that's just bad writing. It should have been shown. It should have been shown to us that Beerus no longer cares about Ultra Instinct. With more meta consequences, I feel like within the Dragon Ball community, at least those that I see, this has led to a pretty big misconception that Beerus is somehow stronger than Goku and Ko in the anime. Something that I take issue with, given that I find that it contradicts a lot of the anime's narrative beats. With Beerus' power ever changing, it's difficult to now take anything said about him seriously. It ruins the credibility of the narrative, since if Toyotaro ever wants Goku and Vegeta to reach closer to him, the ceiling can just be set higher if he ever goes back and changes his mind. Not only has this led to confusion about what is/isn't a credible feat in regards to his power, but in-universe it manages to sully and taint the moments in which Beerus is referenced. To put everything into context, and now I'm going to use both anime and manga examples here, why would Beerus be shocked by Goku's growth if Goku is less than a fraction of a percent of his power? Why does it matter if Vegito is as strong as Beerus if Shin is just downright wrong? Why would Goku say Broly might be as strong as Beerus if Beerus is hundreds if not thousands of times stronger than the Saiyan? Why would Whis admit that Jiren is stronger than his god of destruction who's stronger than Beerus if he's not? How is Moro a threat if Beerus is willing to and can intervene? Why is it that Vegeta was able to punch Beerus at one point in the story, but Vegeta 3 story arcs after, with better utilization of his energy and a new form, just gets absolutely negged by him? Just about all of these moments get vastly corrupted by the fact that the writers can just place Beerus wherever they want and whenever they want, and by proxy, say that the character bringing this information to light was just incorrect. If you ask me, I would go as far to say it just reflects a general incompetence in regards to writing this character. To end off this criticism, I want to say I find that this problem is never better exemplified by Beerus' relationship to Ultra Instinct. It's abundantly clear from the couple of Whis and Beerus statements that Beerus was trying to go for and unlock Ultra Instinct, but they wanted to shake things up for the trajectory of Vegeta's power progression, making him contrast to Goku's angel route. But in doing so, just like another character in the Dragon Ball Super manga, they forgot to mention this previously established goal/aspect of the character, meaning that now those comments about Ultra Instinct are just downright irrelevant, which just shows how little planning actually went into the future of Super after the Tournament of Power. You might even be able to stretch that and say that they weren't even planning stuff after Broly. And that concludes mostly everything I have to say. But speaking of Broly, something I think that's important to mention is a funny little thing I said in the video I made about Broly in the manga. I wasn't really sure where to fit this in, so I thought it would be a fine spot to put it in the conclusion. Go check that video out if you haven't, but essentially the argument is that with the changes of the depiction of the story made in Superhero, it's possible that Broly has now two distinct canons like the rest of the arcs in Super. I went over the differences and said that something that contradicts the manga is Goku's Beerus statement, meaning that if you accept the fact that Broly has two canons, then maybe you can argue that the Beerus retcon is less egregious because it no longer contradicts Goku's statement, because Goku's statement no longer exists within this continuity. Now, obviously, given that I was the one who proposed that video, I do stand by it and believe that it is a valid argument to say that Goku's line just didn't happen. Although this is the case, it still doesn't excuse how sloppy Super's narrative is with Beerus, and also doesn't change the other effects it has on character credibility, power scaling depictions, and this stupid Ultra Instinct thing. So that's it. Let me know what you guys think below. Am I completely wrong and looking too deep into it? Or is there some merit for faulting the narrative for these seemingly inconsistencies and retcons? Just like with any video, give me suggestions for new stuff to make, or where you agree or disagree, so yeah. Here I'm also going to promote the last video I made, as I'm kind of proud of it, and it was a really fun deep dive on Dragon Ball Super anime power scaling, if you're interested in that. Something else I want to say is that my next video will be predominantly not about Dragon Ball Super, as I think it will be fun to return to some stuff from the original series, so look forward to that. Thanks for watching, everyone. To my Dokkan players, good luck in the World Tournament, and have a great day, folks.